Okay, man. What I love, Jordan, about our conversations and about the many that I listen to with you having with other people is everything comes back to McDonald in my heart.
Yeah,
and
good. That's a good place to be.
Yeah, I'm again reminded of Chesterton's. It was either he wrote a couple of things about McDonald, one of which was published upon his passing in 1905. I don't know if it's that or another article, but he described reading McDonald as like walking in a field, and I use this with other people who I'm trying to coax into exploring McDonald. Like, it's worth walking in the field because you come across an absolute treasure that you didn't know was there when you first started walking.
Yep.
And I guess I think that can be every human interaction and should be every human interaction if we have the eyes to see it. And I always experience that when I interact with you. and it's also a lovely walk in the field along the way. Like, it's not like, when are we going to get to this treasure, Jordan? It's legitimately treasures along the way. But then, at least for me personally today, this unpacking of sign and significance has been very moving.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. No, that's very nice for you to say.
And so I'd like to land this conversation with two questions. The first being back to your point about Christ as the image of the invisible God, and more specifically, Jesus as a human in time and according to our beliefs as God and man. In order for him to be the image of the invisible God, there had to be an imagination.
Yes, right.
To originate.
Exactly.
Yeah. And manifest in time.
Yeah.
So tell me about that process. And then to round out the Halloween theme, tell me about the process of us imagining in ourselves as him until we are him. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's good. As to the first, I want to say just this right off, and we'll see where this leads. I would say God's imagination is the eternal generation of the Son.
Oh, that's awesome. Say that again.
God's imagination is the eternal generation of the Son.
Yeah.
Why? Well, it's because, of course, when God imagines, there's nothing there to imagine but himself. And so whatever his, and yet if it's a true imagining or something that at least resembles what we would mean by an act of imagination, and it is an act, and even in traditional theology throughout all Christian history, it's called an act of origination. And so on the one hand, it would be an utterly peculiar act, this first act, this act which is in a sense first because it's always. And it would have to be an act that on the one hand actually is a sign, right? And a making of a sign in a sense. So like the significance discussion, the image as the whole intelligibility, you might call it the logos, whole logic. It would have to therefore there has to be a sign, but the sign has to be of himself. Otherwise, it's some other thing that's sort of lesser. It's a byproduct. It's a smaller creation. It's a pale imitation. But the claim in the Trinity is that the Father's generation of the Son doesn't just, it's not just an act that is like, oh, now the Father has something to know. It's the thing that he has to know is himself as the other. That is to say, the Son is the sign of the Father. He makes the Son, the Son makes God the Father signified.
Yeah.
He's the sign maker in that sense, but what he's a sign of is not something other than himself. So now we're starting to mix with the Trinitarian, and by the way, I would say the Spirit is the one. It's not just that connects the two, the one who's perceiving and the one who's perceived, the sign maker and the sign, but it connects the two as being one.
Yeah.
Like in other words, it's really not accidental, by the way, that this is kind of the structure of our own self-consciousness. I can signify myself to myself, and it's me, myself, doing it all.
Wow. Right.
So the thing that is very puzzling to scientists, to neuroscientists, to phenomenologists, to anthropologists is self-consciousness, not just life or organic life,
Yeah.
not just consciousness, but self-consciousness. So it's like the thing that philosophy has been obsessed with forever. And in a way, in the modern era, we've turned to it in a way that wasn't even as explicit as I would argue in most of pre-modern philosophy, although it's not absent. But I think so much of this is tied up with the Christian influence of the Trinity, the Christian influence of God knowing God's self. I mean, Aristotle said, God sort of is the one who's knowing itself, but knowing itself as itself. This is signification, right?
Yeah.
This is imagination, and I would say that God's imagination just is the act of is generating the Son in the Spirit, that is to say, in the perceiving the Son he generated as his own sign, the sign of himself, one, and then number two, Maximus says about the incarnation, then that this is sort of like, this is why it's not at all impossible and not a barrier that in his life as a human being, as a creature, and this is a direct quote from Maximus now, he became a symbol of himself.
Yeah.
It's another act of imagination. But it's also, right, the same act as the eternal Trinity. This is why the Son is Jesus.
Yes. And
right.
Is it fair to say that he is a sign not just for us, but also for himself?
Yeah. He knows himself, knowing himself in himself.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would say this is the ultimate way, if we're going to get really just throw all the way to the deep water. I mean, this is my inkling anyway. I can't say I could just unfold the whole system, but I would say that's the way God relates to his own act of creating the world. Meister Eckhart says, he loves this verse in the Psalm, which says, you have spoken and I have heard two words. Or it might actually be, you have said one word. I think it's something like that. You've said one word, but I hear two things. And he interprets that very creatively as God says one thing, the word of God, the Son, but he hears two things, the word of God in his divinity and the word of God in his humanity, which is to say the world.